In the busy Los Angeles restaurant, a young woman on a wheelchair came for her first blind date, hoping to feel normal again. But when her wheelchair suddenly broke, her date walked away in embarrassment. Just when everyone turned their eyes away, a kind waiter stepped forward and whispered, "Don't worry, I'm actually a mechanic." What happened next changed her life forever. Like, share and subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. Now let's get started. The evening air in Los Angeles was calm and golden, the city lights flickering like scattered stars. Inside a cozy restaurant called La Bella Rosa, warm candles flickered across the tables and soft jazz music floated through the air. Laughter, clinking glasses, and the murmur of small conversations filled the place with life. In the corner, at a small round table by the window, sat Emma, a 24-year-old woman with chestnut hair and gentle eyes. She wore a blue floral dress that brushed lightly against her wheelchair. Tonight was special, her first blind date in years. Emma looked beautiful, but inside, her heart was racing. 3 years ago, a terrible car accident had changed everything. Before that, she had been a dancer, full of movement, full of dreams. Now, she had learned to live with stillness. Her wheelchair had become both her lifeline and her cage. But tonight, she wanted to forget that. She wanted to feel normal again, to laugh, to be seen not as the girl in the chair, but as Emma, just Emma. She checked her phone again. Her date was a man named Ryan, someone she'd met through a dating app. His messages had been kind and witty, and he seemed like a man with manners. The waiter approached her with a polite smile. "Would you like some water while you wait?" he asked. "Yes, please," Emma replied with a soft smile. Her palms were slightly sweaty, but she brushed it off. Maybe, she told herself, this would be the start of something new. A few minutes later, Ryan arrived. He was tall, well-dressed, carrying a small bouquet. "Hi, Emma?" he asked. She smiled shyly. "Yes, that's me." "Wow, you look great," he said, sitting down across from her. She blushed lightly. For a few moments, things actually felt normal. They exchanged a few jokes, looked at the menu, and placed their orders. The air felt easy at first, but then the awkward silence crept in. Ryan glanced at his phone a few times, fidgeted with his napkin, and seemed distracted. Trying to break the silence, Emma gently rolled her chair closer to the table. But as she turned the wheel, there was a loud crack. The front wheel twisted sharply and locked. Her glass tipped over, spilling water across the table. The sound echoed in the quiet restaurant. People turned to look. Emma froze. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, trying to steady the chair. The wheel refused to move. Her heart sank as she felt the heat of embarrassment rush to her face. Ryan looked down, confused. Is it broken?" he asked, his tone unsure. "I think—" "Yes," she murmured, her voice trembling. Ryan stood awkwardly, glancing around. "Should I call someone?" he asked, but before she could answer, he took a step back. "Actually, I just remembered I have an early meeting tomorrow. I'm really sorry about this, Emma." Her eyes widened in disbelief. "Wait, you're leaving?" He gave a half-smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I'll text you, okay?" And before she could say another word, he was gone. The door closed behind him. The restaurant fell silent again, except for the soft hum of the music and the sound of Emma's uneven breathing. She looked down at her useless wheel, at her trembling hands. People were staring, some with pity, some pretending not to see. Her throat tightened. She wanted to disappear. "Not again," she whispered under her breath. Every time she tried to step back into the world, something reminded her of what she'd lost. She hated how fragile it made her feel, how fragile everyone assumed she was. For a moment she just sat there, fighting back tears. Then a quiet voice broke the silence. "Hey, are you okay?" Emma looked up. A young waiter stood there, early 20s, simple uniform, hair slightly messy, eyes full of genuine concern. "I'm fine," she lied. "Just not my night." He crouched a little, his voice gentle. "Doesn't look like it's just the chair that's broken, huh?" he said with a soft smile. Emma blinked, caught off guard. "You could say that." He paused for a moment, then leaned closer and whispered, "Don't worry. I'm actually a mechanic." Emma frowned slightly. "What?" he chuckled. "A real one." I just work here part-time. Cars, bikes, chairs, you name it, I fix it. He kneeled beside her wheelchair, examining the wheel carefully. You really don't have to, Emma began, but he interrupted kindly. I want to. Let me help. Without hesitation, he pulled a small butter knife from a nearby table and borrowed a pen from another waiter. Twisting the pen open, he used the tiny spring as a makeshift tool. His movements were calm, practiced, and confident. People nearby watched silently as he worked, his focus absolute. The manager frowned from across the room, but didn't stop him. Emma watched, half embarrassed, half mesmerized. The waiter, Jake, his name tag read, moved like someone who actually cared about what he was doing. After a few moments, there was a quiet click, and the wheel straightened. Jake gave it a small push, and it rolled perfectly. There you go, he said with a grin. Good as new, Emma blinked. You fixed it? Told you, he smiled. I'm a mechanic. She laughed softly, a sound she hadn't heard from herself in a long time. Thank you. You really didn't have to do that. Maybe I did, he said. Maybe the universe wanted me to. The people around them clapped quietly. Emma felt her face warm, but this time it wasn't from shame. It was something softer, gratitude, maybe even hope. Jake stood up, brushing his hands on his apron. Enjoy your evening, Mum, he said, giving a small nod. As he walked away, Emma watched him go. Her heart was still beating fast, but for the first time that night, it wasn't from panic. It was because she had just witnessed something pure, kindness, with no reason, no agenda. She looked down at her repaired wheelchair and smiled faintly. Maybe tonight wasn't about a date at all. Maybe it was about a reminder that the world still had people who could fix things that were broken, even hearts. Outside, through the window, the city lights glowed like a promise. Emma sat quietly, the faintest smile on her lips. Somewhere deep inside, she felt the first spark of something new, the start of a story she hadn't expected to begin that night. The restaurant had grown quieter as the night drifted on, but Emma's heart still beat fast from what had just happened. She couldn't stop glancing at the man who'd fixed her wheelchair, Jake. He moved quickly between tables, carrying trays and refilling glasses, pretending nothing extraordinary had just happened. But for Emma, everything about the moment felt extraordinary. No one had ever treated her that way before, like she wasn't fragile, like she didn't need pity. He hadn't even hesitated to kneel down on the restaurant floor to help her. He'd just seen something broken and fixed it, because that's who he was. After a few minutes, Jake came back with a small towel and carefully wiped the spilled water from her table. Sorry about earlier, he said with a warm smile. Didn't mean to make a scene. Emma shook her head quickly. No, you didn't. You saved me from one. He chuckled softly. Well, I'm glad to help. That wheel should hold for now, but it could use a proper fix later. If you don't mind me saying, those old models wear out fast. She smiled faintly. You talk about wheelchairs like they're sports cars. Jake laughed. To me, everything with wheels is worth fixing. Emma couldn't help but smile back. Something about the way he said it, calm, confident, with a spark of kindness, made her chest feel lighter. He picked up the empty glass from her table, nodded, and walked off again to serve another group. She watched him for a few seconds, the way he greeted customers with a smile, how he seemed to actually listen when they spoke. He looked young, maybe 26, but there was something older in his eyes, something that had seen struggle, like hers. When Emma finally left that night, the restaurant was almost empty. She rolled herself toward the exit, pausing for a second as she caught Jake wiping down a table. Their eyes met, and for some reason she felt a warmth spread through her chest. Thank you again, she said softly. Jake smiled, lifting his hand in a small wave. Any time. That night, as Emma returned to her apartment, the city lights outside her window looked different. Maybe it was her imagination, but they felt softer somehow. She looked down at her wheelchair, remembering the way Jake had fixed it, the way he'd looked at her not with pity, but with respect. She smiled to herself and whispered, maybe not everyone leaves. Over the next few days, she couldn't get him out of her mind. It wasn't romantic, not yet. It was curiosity, admiration, and something more subtle, gratitude. People like Jake were rare. She found herself wishing she could say thank you again, but she didn't know his last name, his number, or anything else about him, just that he worked nights at La Bella Rosa. A week passed before she decided to go back. She told herself it was just for dinner, but deep down, she knew it was more than that. When she arrived, the same soft music played, and the same warm lighting wrapped the room in gold. As she entered, Jake noticed her instantly. His face lit up with surprise, then with a genuine smile. "You came back," he said, walking over. Emma laughed. "I figured I should check if your repair job held up." He looked down at the chair and tapped the wheel. Lightly. "Still rolling smooth, huh?" "Guess I did good." He guided her to a table near the window, the same one from before. "Dinner's on me tonight," he said playfully. "House policy for customers who survive mechanical emergencies." Emma shook her head, smiling. "You're not serious." "Completely," he said with mock pride. "We even have a new category in the menu, wheelchair rescue discount." She laughed, genuinely this time. It was the kind of laugh that broke through layers of sadness. As the evening went on, Jake took short breaks between serving to chat with her. She learned that he used to work in his father's repair shop before it closed down after his father passed away. To make ends meet, he started waiting tables while saving up to reopen the garage someday. "Cars, I understand," he said, leaning on her table for a moment. "But people, they're trickier to fix." Emma looked at him quietly, the candlelight soft on her face. "Maybe because people aren't meant to be fixed. Maybe they just need someone who believes they can be whole again." He stared at her for a second, the playful tone fading into something deeper. "That's a really good way to look at it." They talked for nearly an hour that night between his shifts. She told him about her accident, how she'd been in physical therapy for years, how she'd built walls around herself just to keep disappointment out. He didn't interrupt, didn't try to comfort her with hollow words. He just listened, really listened, and that was enough. When the night ended, Jake walked her to the door. "Thank you for coming back," he said quietly. "Thank you for being the kind of person who makes people want to," she replied. Outside, the air was cool. The streets glimmered with the reflections of streetlights. Emma paused by her car and turned to him one last time. "You know," she said with a teasing grin, "mechanics deserve dinner too." She handed him a folded napkin, her phone number written in neat handwriting, along with a tiny doodle of a wheel. Jake laughed, a little stunned. "Guess I'll have to make a reservation then." "Guess you will," she said before driving off. The following week, Jake texted her. It was simple. "Dinner plans still open for mechanics?" Her reply came within seconds. "Only if you promise not to bring tools this time." They met again that weekend, this time outside of the restaurant under the California sunset. Jake picked her up in his old pickup truck, carefully helping her into the front seat before folding her wheelchair into the back. They drove along the Pacific coast, the ocean shimmering beside them. The wind played with her hair as she looked out at the waves. "You know," she said softly, "I used to think people only stayed around when things were easy." Jake kept his eyes on the road but smiled. "Then I guess I'm not most people." They stopped by a small diner overlooking the water, ordered burgers and talked for hours about dreams, loss, the small things that made life beautiful. For the first time in years, Emma didn't feel broken. She felt alive. When Jake dropped her back home, she hesitated for a moment before saying, "There's something about you. You fix things, but you don't make people feel broken first." Jake met her gaze and smiled gently. "Maybe that's because I know what it's like to be broken myself." That night, as she watched his truck drive away, Emma felt something shift inside her, a soft hope that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the end of her story, but the beginning of something far more beautiful. The days turned into weeks, and with every passing one, Emma and Jake grew closer. Their meetings became effortless. Sometimes dinner at her favorite cafe, sometimes a quiet walk by the beach where the sound of waves blended with their laughter. There was something peaceful about their connection. It wasn't rushed or dramatic. It felt real. two people who had found comfort in each other's quiet company. Jake had an old garage on the edge of town, one he used to run with his father before life had forced him into restaurant work. He'd told Emma about it once, in passing, saying how he missed the sound of engines and the smell of oil, how fixing things made him feel grounded. But he'd also told her he hadn't been back there in a while. It held too many memories. Emma listened gently, never pushing, never asking more than he was ready to share. One Sunday afternoon, she received a text from him. "I'm working on something. Come by the garage today. Promise it'll be worth it." She smiled, a little curious, a little nervous. When she arrived, the sun was dipping low, painting the sky in gold and crimson. The garage looked old from the outside. Faded paint, a half-rusted sign that still read Henderson Repairs. But as Jake rolled up the metal door, a wave of light spilled out, and inside, the place felt alive. Tools hung neatly on the walls, soft music played from an old radio, and in the middle of the space stood something covered with a cloth. "Welcome to my secret lab," Jake said, wiping grease from his hands. His eyes sparkled the way they did whenever he was proud of something. Emma smiled, wheeling closer. "You've been busy." "You have no idea," he said, a grin tugging at his lips. "I've been working on this for weeks now." He pulled the cloth away, revealing a sleek, modern wheelchair, unlike anything Emma had ever seen. The frame was lightweight, with shock absorbers built into the sides, adjustable seat height, and soft grip wheels that seemed designed for comfort and control. It didn't look like a medical device. It looked like freedom. Emma stared in disbelief. "You built this?" she whispered. Jake nodded. "Every piece. I've been saving up parts, designing it from scratch. It's built for people who can't afford the expensive models, people who deserve better." Her eyes welled up with tears. "Jake, this is beautiful." He crouched beside it, adjusting a screw. "You once told me that people don't need fixing. They just need someone to believe they can be whole again. I guess this is me showing you I believe that. This chair isn't about what's broken. It's about what's possible." Emma tried to speak, but her throat tightened. "Why would you do this?" "For me?" He smiled softly. "Not just for you. For everyone like you. But yeah, you inspired it." She reached out, brushing her hand along the smooth frame. It was more than metal and wheels. It was care, thought, and heart all molded into one. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Say you'll test it," Jake said with a grin. He helped her transfer gently into the new chair, making sure every strap and handle fit perfectly. When she placed her hands on the wheels, they moved with ease, smooth, light, almost effortless. She glided forward, turning in a circle, laughing out loud. "Jake, this is amazing," she said, her voice echoing through the garage. He stood watching her, unable to hide his smile. "Looks good on you," he said quietly. She stopped and looked at him, eyes shining. "You don't even know what you've done. You gave me something back that I thought I'd lost forever." Jake tilted his head, curious. "What's that?" "Control," she said softly. "Hope." For a long moment they just stood there, the hum of the old radio playing a slow song, the sun pouring gold light through the open door. Emma could feel her heartbeat slowing, matching the quiet rhythm of the world around them. She'd never expected to find this kind of peace again, the kind that wasn't about being fixed, but about being accepted completely as she was. Jake looked at her with a tenderness that made her chest ache. "You know," he said, "my dad used to say something. He said, every broken thing has a story, and sometimes fixing it means listening first." Emma smiled through tears. "He sounds like a good man." "He was," Jake said, glancing at the floor. "And I think he'd like you." They spent the next hour talking, laughing, and testing small features of the wheelchair. Jake showed her the little details, how it could handle rough ground, how the seat cushioned movement, how easily it folded. He spoke with such passion, such belief in what he was doing, that Emma couldn't help but be inspired. When the sun finally dipped below the horizon, the garage filled with the soft orange glow of twilight. Emma turned toward Jake and said quietly, "You fix more than machines, Jake." He looked up, smiling gently. "You make people want to be better." Neither of them spoke after that. The silence between them wasn't empty, it was full of everything they didn't need to say. Emma could feel something inside her shift again. That same spark she'd felt the night her wheelchair had broken. But this time it wasn't about rescue. It was about connection, something deeper than gratitude. Jake walked her outside, where the night air was cool and calm. The stars had begun to appear, scattered across the dark blue sky. Emma rolled beside him slowly, feeling the new chair move like it was part of her. "You know," she said softly, "I think that accident, the one that took my legs, it wasn't just an ending. Maybe it was the start of everything that led me here." Jake looked at her for a moment, his expression tender. "Then I'm glad you came here," he said quietly. She laughed softly. "I am too." They stood under the open sky for a while, just looking at the lights of Los Angeles flickering in the distance. There was something healing about the moment. Two souls who had both been broken by life, finding something whole in each other's presence. As Emma turned to leave, she looked back at Jake and smiled. "Promise me something," she said. "Anything. Don't stop building things that make people's lives better." He nodded slowly. "Only if you promise to keep believing they can be." And for the first time in years, Emma felt completely alive. The sound of the city, the breeze against her face, the strength of the wheels beneath her hands, everything felt new, like a rebirth. She realized that healing didn't always mean walking again. Sometimes it just meant moving forward, with someone who saw you not as broken, but as whole. As she rolled away from the garage, she looked up at the night sky and whispered to herself, "He fixed my chair, and somehow he fixed my heart too." And somewhere behind her, Jake stood watching with the faintest smile, knowing that in helping her find freedom, he had found his own.